HOA Karen beats my 5-year-old mute daughter with a belt. Every day, unaware I'm federal prosecutor, she stood outside my front porch waving a belt in her hand like it was part of some twisted HOA uniform. "You don't discipline your child, so—" "I will," she snapped, and before I could get out the door, my little girl flinched and backed into the wall, her tiny hands shaking, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. My daughter can't speak. She hasn't said a word since birth. "Karen, didn't care, I warned you," she yelled, loud enough for the whole block to hear. "Your kid keeps walking on the HOA lawn. This is my neighborhood." I took a deep breath, kept my hands at my sides. "This is my land. I bought it cash 5 years ago. There's no HOA here. We opted out." Karen scoffed. "I am the HOA. You think you can just raise a wild child here with no consequences? You think we don't have rules?" My daughter stood there frozen. Her hands were scratched. I'd noticed the bruises for days, but she couldn't tell me how she got them. Now I knew. My heart dropped to the floor. "You touch her again," I said slowly, trying to keep the rage out of my voice, "and you'll regret it." That's when Karen laughed. "Oh, now you want to act tough. Go ahead, call someone. You think anyone's gonna help an unstable single dad who lets his kid run wild?" She didn't know who I was, that I worked cases way worse than her, that I had connections in places she couldn't even pronounce. Then she walked off like she owned the whole block. Same way she did last week when she left a fake HOA violation on my window, saying I had unauthorized child activity in my own backyard. I'd kept quiet then. Not anymore. That night, I checked the hidden camera I'd installed near the porch light. I didn't want to believe it. But there it was. Clear footage of Karen grabbing my daughter by the arm, dragging her off the sidewalk and hitting her. Not once, not twice, but 5 times. Next morning, she showed up again, with a clipboard and a smile. "You'll be getting a formal HOA warning today," she said. "And if that doesn't fix things, I'm calling the county." I looked her in the eye. "Do it." She blinked. "Excuse me?" I leaned in. "Just make sure you use your real name when you file that report, because when the charges hit, impersonating HOA, child endangerment, assault on a minor, I want the paperwork to say Karen B. Mitchell, not some fake title." Her smile dropped. She didn't know I already sent the footage to 3 federal contacts last night. She didn't know the call she was about to make would trace back to a prosecutor's office with my name on the desk, and she sure didn't know this was just the beginning. The next morning she came back, angrier than before. She wasn't alone this time. A white van with no plates pulled up right behind her SUV. 2 men stepped out, one wearing what looked like a private security badge, the other holding a taser like he was itching to use it. Karen pointed straight at my front door. "That's him. He's violent. He threatened me yesterday. I want him removed from the neighborhood." I stood on my porch in jeans and a plain t-shirt, holding my daughter's teddy bear in one hand. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched as Karen spun her story like a pro. "This is HOA enforced removal," she shouted loud enough for my neighbors to peek through blinds. "We've warned him. He's not mentally fit. His daughter's a disturbance. She doesn't talk and he doesn't control her." My mute daughter was clinging to my leg, looking up at me with wide, terrified eyes. The man with the taser stepped forward. "We're going to need you to come with us, sir." I smiled for the first time. "You boys sure you know who sent you?" I asked quietly. The one with the badge hesitated. "We were told to—" I raised my hand and held out a folded document. "You were sent by a woman impersonating federal authority on private property. That's a felony. Here's the court order, signed, stamped, filed yesterday." His face went pale as he read. Karen stormed up to me. "You forged that. You think you can scare me with paper? I've lived here for 20 years. I practically run this block." That's when the van's driver suddenly backed up, fast, and sped off. The taser guy followed, cursing under his breath. The badge guy just looked at me like he saw a ghost. Karen stood frozen, realizing something was off. I took a step closer. "You brought in fake enforcers. You impersonated HOA authority. And you laid hands on a federal prosecutor's child. Karen's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. I didn't answer. I just turned my phone around and played the voice message from last night. A senior DOJ officer's voice crackled through the speaker. Saw the footage. That woman's going down. Hold tight. Don't engage unless it's defense. Karen stepped back. You're making this bigger than it is. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew this wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. She tried to regain control. Fine, I'll call the sheriff myself. Let's see what they think of your little threats. I let her call. I let her shout into the phone, pacing up and down my lawn. And then I watched her face twist as the dispatcher transferred her to someone she didn't expect, someone she couldn't lie to, because it was my office. She heard my name. She heard the title, and she went quiet. I picked up my daughter, walked back inside, and closed the door without saying a word. But this wasn't over. Not even close. 2 nights later, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I was woken by a loud crash. Front window shattered. My daughter didn't scream. She just shook in her bed, arms over her head like she was used to hiding from something. I ran to her, scooped her up, and kept low. The porch motion sensor lit up, and through the shards of broken glass, I saw flames, licking the edge of our welcome mat. Someone had thrown a Molotov, but they weren't smart. They left fingerprints on the bottle, clear ones. By the time the fire department arrived, the flames were under control, but I already knew who it was, and I knew why. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. She was trying to erase the evidence, make me leave before the law caught up to her. She thought if she could push me far enough, I'd break, and she'd win. The next morning, while the fire report was being filed, she strutted past my driveway holding a leash with a dog that wasn't hers. Heard you had a little accident, she said, smirking. Maybe this place just isn't safe for kids. I didn't answer. I was looking at the ash marks on my porch, thinking how close she came to killing my daughter in her sleep. And she was laughing. That's when I stopped waiting. I called in my favor. One of my old cases, a high-profile gang trial, had ended in conviction because of an FBI tech specialist named Julian. He owed me. Big. Within hours, he'd accessed public cameras, traffic feeds, even Ring doorbells from the street. He pulled the footage, cleaned it up, and sent it to me. There she was. Karen, hood up, bottle in hand, lighter in the other. But the twist? She wasn't alone. Walking 2 steps behind her was the same man from the van, the one with the badge. She lied about him too, said she didn't know who he was. Turns out, he was her nephew, on probation, and she used him like a weapon. That night I sent the footage to every law contact I had, CC'd the district attorney's office, and made sure to mark it urgent. I didn't hide anymore. I wanted her to know it was coming. At noon the next day, she knocked on my door with sunglasses on and a fake smile. We got off on the wrong foot, she said, like nothing had ever happened. Maybe we could talk things out. I leaned against the doorway. You know what the worst part is? She blinked. What? My daughter doesn't speak, but she draws. I held up the paper. It was a crayon sketch she made last week. A lady with short blonde hair holding a belt, standing over a crying stick figure kid. Karen's face went pale. I didn't say another word. I let the sirens speak for me. 4 black SUVs rolled up behind her, unmarked. No lights. Federal task force. She turned around slowly, and when she saw them, when she saw the guns, the vests, the badges, she ran. Didn't even try to explain. But it was too late. They had the footage. They had the drawings. They had her voice on tape. And now, they had her. They cuffed her, not in the dramatic TV-style way, with screaming and struggling, but in the quiet way that tells you it's real. Linda didn't resist. She just stood there, stunned, as Ramos read her rights out loud, every word hitting like a hammer. Impersonating a public officer, unlawful entry, attempted theft, and harassment under false authority. Her face had changed. That smug look was gone. Her lips trembled, eyes darting everywhere like she was trying to find someone to save her, but no one moved. The clipboard guy drove off. The camera guy slipped into the SUV and sped down the gravel road without a glance back. Her little HOA army, folded like paper in the rain. Ramos turned to me. "You okay?" I nodded, still holding the folder. He looked at the barn, then at the tractor, then back at me. "She's been pushing this angle for months. We didn't have anything solid until today." I handed him the drone footage. "This'll help," he smiled. "You've done more than help. You just pulled the pin on a whole web of this nonsense. She's been expanding HOA reach illegally, going after vets, immigrants, retirees, anyone who couldn't fight back. And that's when I said it, loud enough for her to hear. She picked the wrong hill to climb." They loaded her into the cruiser and rolled out slowly, dust kicking up behind them. For a moment, everything was still again, just me, Duke, and the hum of the wind through the grass. But I wasn't calm, not yet, because as Ramos left, he called out one last thing. "We're going to need you to testify, you know. There's a lot more than just your case." I nodded, "Whatever it takes." But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd found something else in her file. Something deeper. Something planned. A signature on a zoning document. That wasn't hers. And whoever signed it, they were higher up than Linda, and still out there. The next morning, I drove into town. Not because I had to, but because I wanted them to see me. The guy who didn't back down. The guy they thought was just another old rancher with rusty tools and no clue. Downtown was buzzing. Word travels fast in small towns, especially when a fake HOA queen gets arrested in broad daylight for trying to tow a war vet's tractor. At the diner, people paused mid-bite. A few nodded. One old man stood and shook my hand without saying a word. Respect doesn't need noise. But I wasn't there for breakfast. I was there for the county clerk's office. I needed answers about that signature, the one I found on the zoning document Linda tried to use against me. The form said my ranch had been pre-cleared for community development extension. The problem? That approval was dated 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, I hadn't filed anything. I slid the paper across the counter to the clerk, a sharp woman named Denise who'd worked there longer than I'd lived in town. She looked it over once, then twice. This stamp, it's legit," she said. "But this signature," she paused. "That's not yours." I nodded. "I know." She flipped the paper, scanned a barcode, and tapped into the system. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Well, would you look at that?" "What?" This didn't come from HOA. It came from the Land Advisory Office, but the request was filed by someone named Stephen L. Madsen. I froze. Madsen. The former city planner turned real estate consultant. I'd seen that name on the signs going up around the county. Future site of whispering estates. Polished homes. Gated. Communities. The kind of places where people like Linda played dictator with a clipboard. "You telling me this guy filed for my land?" Denise leaned closer. "Filed, approved, and had it stamped from inside the office." My stomach sank. This wasn't just Linda trying to throw her weight around. This was coordinated. Someone forged approval papers, cleared land they didn't own, and sent her in to push people out. It wasn't personal to them. But to me, it was war. And now I had a new name. Stephen Madsen. He tried to erase my land with a signature. He had no idea what was coming next. That night, I pulled the old lockbox out from under the floorboards. Not because I was scared, because I was ready. Inside were 3 things: my discharge papers, my wife's field journal from her SWAT days, and a small leather-bound notebook she gave me the day we closed on this land. On the first page she'd written, "If someone ever tries to take what's ours, start here." That wasn't just sentiment, it was a warning. And a plan. The notebook was full of names, notes, court precedents, contacts in state offices, people who owed her favors, people who owed me. And halfway through, a name I hadn't thought of in years. Captain Torres, retired, legal consultant now. She helped rewrite state land defense protocols for veterans. I sent her a text with one photo, the forged zoning form. She replied 5 minutes later, "Meet me in 2 days. This goes deeper than you think." The next morning, I got another knock, on my gate. Different car, black SUV, government plates. This time no clipboard, just a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as a regional development advisor. Said he was here on behalf of a private party interested in easing tension regarding your property. I didn't even let him finish. "You work for Madsen?" I asked. He blinked. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. I looked him dead in the eye. "Tell your boss if he wants a piece of this land, he can buy a shovel and dig for it himself. And when he hits my wife's badge buried under that oak tree, he can explain to her ghost why he forged her name." He tried to smile. "Sir, we can offer you a very generous settlement." I stepped closer. Real calm, real slow. "I don't want your money." Then I leaned in. "I want everything you built. Burned down legally, piece by piece." He backed off, got in the SUV, drove away. But I knew then. They were scared. Not because I yelled, because I was quiet, and because I just started turning the gears my wife left behind. This wasn't about saving my ranch any. 2 days later, I met Captain Torres in a quiet office above a feed store. No signs, no suits, just dusty floors and a file cabinet older than me. She hadn't changed much, tough as nails, eyes like she could still read a battlefield in one glance. She didn't waste time. "Your land's not the only one, Jack." She laid out a map, red dots everywhere. 23 properties targeted, all veterans, all just outside HOA limits. Same tactics, fake notices, zoning adjustments, pressure to sell. I leaned in. "And Madsen's behind all of them?" She nodded. "Not just him. He's the front. The money comes from a holding company based in Nevada. Shell corporations, offshore accounts, you know the game. But here's the kicker. 3 of the notaries on these documents, dead for years." I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just shady. It was criminal at the highest level. Why hasn't anyone stopped it? Because it's clean on paper, or it was, until you kept receipts. She handed me a USB drive. Inside is everything we've gathered. Testimonies, property scans, digital forensics. You're the missing piece, Jack. The first one who pushed back loud enough. I looked down at the drive, then at her. "So what now?" She smiled. "Now we go public." We coordinated the release for Friday. Why Friday? Because that's when the county board meets and cameras roll. But before that, I had one more thing to do. I drove back to Linda's gated neighborhood. This time I brought a camera, parked my tractor right outside their polished front entrance. No signs, no shouting, just a flag, an American flag, mounted to the back, flapping in the wind. Neighbors came out, phones up, whispers, confused looks. Then I hit play on a Bluetooth speaker. It was Linda's own voice, from the footage, screaming about towing, claiming authority, calling fake violations, and I left it on loop. Within minutes, 2 HOA board members came outside, trying to stop it. I didn't move. "This ain't your land," I said calmly. "No," one of them muttered, but neither was hers. And just like that, even they backed off. By nightfall, the whole neighborhood knew. By morning, the news vans were outside my gate, and by the time Friday came, every lie they'd built was about to come crashing down on live television, or it was about exposing all of them. Friday morning came with a storm, thunder in the sky and fire in the air. The courthouse lawn was packed. Reporters, local families, veterans, farmers. Even people from Linda's own neighborhood showed up, some holding signs that read, "We Stand with Jack. Land is freedom. No more fake power. Inside the chambers, the county board sat stiff as the evidence played on the projector. Document after document. Footage of Linda's threats. Madsen's fake filings. The notary dates that made no sense. Testimonies from others who had been harassed, pushed out, and humiliated just like me. Captain Torres stood beside me, sharp, in uniform. When she spoke, the whole room went silent. Mr. Madsen and his associates attempted to illegally claim veteran-owned land by manipulating local zoning laws, falsifying authority, and coercing families with no legal ground. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a system built to quietly steal what wasn't theirs. Then she turned to me, and it fell apart, because one man didn't move his tractor. The room erupted in applause. Madsen wasn't there. Out on day. Of course he wasn't, but his lawyer was, squirming in his seat like he already knew what the final slide would be. Because the last document Torres showed, it was the land seizure report Madsen filed, signed by Linda, but dated before she ever stepped foot on my ranch. They had it planned. They thought I'd give up. They thought I'd sell, move, disappear like the others. Instead, I fought. And the board knew it. They called a vote right there in the chamber. 0. Every zoning change reversed. Every fraudulent document voided. Formal investigation into Madsen's company launched. Warrants issued by sundown. But none of that compared to what happened as I walked out the courthouse door. An old woman, someone I didn't know, pressed a folded flag into my hands. Her voice was shaky, but her words hit harder than anything all day. My husband fought in Korea, she said. This land, it matters. Thank you for reminding people. I stood there for a moment, holding that flag, not just as a symbol, but as proof. They came for my tractor, they came for my land, but I stood on that dirt and I said no, and in the end, that one word was louder than every lie they told. No. Weeks passed. The headlines faded, the cameras left. Life started crawling back to normal, if anything after that could be called normal again. But for me, the land felt different now. Not heavier, not darker. Just earned. Every fence post, every row of corn, every mile of cracked dirt under my boots, it all stood because I did. Linda was indicted, pled guilty to impersonation, forgery, and harassment. She took a deal, but the damage was done. Her HOA board dissolved under pressure, and homeowners sued her into oblivion. Madsen, he ran, tried to shift blame, claimed he was misled by his team. But Torres found his signatures, his offshore accounts, and more fake land transfers tied to a dozen counties. Federal charges landed like thunder. Turns out, it's hard to lie when the whole nation's watching. One morning, I walked out to the edge of my property where the gate meets the old oak. Buried beneath it is my wife's badge, just like I told that government man. It's not marked. No sign. No monument. Just roots and soil and memory. I kneeled there. Just for a second. Still keeping us safe. I whispered. And as I stood, I saw something across the road. A small family unloading boxes from a truck. New neighbors. They looked over, hesitant, unsure. Probably heard all the stories. I raised a hand, gave a nod. The man smiled. Then his little girl, maybe 6 years old, ran up to the fence. "Did you really fight the bad lady with the clipboard?" she asked. I laughed. Something like that. She giggled and ran back, waving behind her. "Mom, he's real." And for the first time in months, I laughed from the belly. A deep, honest laugh. Because, yeah, I was real. I was still here. And this land? It wasn't just mine anymore. It was proof that truth can outlast lies, that standing your ground matters, that even when the whole world says move, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not. A few months later, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. Just my name, and the kind of penmanship you don't see much anymore. Inside was a simple note. You don't know me, but you saved my home. They tried the same thing with me. Only difference is, you said no first, thank you. Taped to the bottom was a photo, an old mobile home sitting on a plot of desert land with a flagpole in front and a handwritten sign. Private property, protected by truth. I must have read it 5 times. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just my fight, it never was. What happened here had started a wave. Veterans, farmers, families, people who'd been bullied by fake HOAs and backdoor developers for years finally had something to point to. A case, a victory, a blueprint for pushing back. Torres told me later. Over 40 property disputes had been reopened across the state. Madsen's network? Crumbling. State investigators were expanding into other counties. Even a few crooked officials were quietly stepping down before things got louder. Funny thing is, I never set out to make a point. I just didn't want my tractor towed. But sometimes standing still is louder than shouting. Sometimes a tractor on dirt is more powerful than a podium. And sometimes, one man on a ranch can remind a whole damn country what land really means. It ain't just space, it's blood, it's family. It's history written in sweat and roots and freedom. Now, the ranch is quiet again. I rebuilt the gate, put up a new mailbox, painted the barn red like my wife always wanted. But I left one thing exactly the same. That tractor, still parked out front, still a little dusty, still hooked to the chain. Linda's fake crew never got to use, not because I need it there, but because, now, it's a monument to every no that ever meant something, to every battle fought without a gun, to every clipboard that thought it could rewrite a man's story. Let 'em come again if they want. Just know this time, they'll be facing a nation that remembers what happened here, on this land, on my ranch, where I didn't move. Right before everything settled, I had one last visit. It was raining hard, like the sky itself wanted to wash the whole damn mess away. I heard the tires, before I saw the car. A black sedan, quiet, slow, parked right outside the gate. I stepped out onto the porch, shotgun leaning by the door, not loaded, just tradition. The man who stepped out wore a long coat and no expression, briefcase in hand, suit too clean for this dirt. "Mr. Harper," he said, calm. "I represent a group of investors previously affiliated with Stephen Madsen. They're looking to settle outstanding matters quietly." I didn't say a word. He opened the briefcase. Inside, a check, 7 figures. Enough to rebuild the HOA trench. Enough to buy 10 more. Enough to walk away. I looked at it for a long second. Then I looked at him. "You know what the problem is with people like you?" I said. "You think land is numbers on paper." He didn't respond. "You think you can erase history with ink. You think a man's story can be bought off." I closed the case, pushed it back toward him. "This land's been paid for already," I said. "In service, in scars, in a woman who fought harder than you ever will." He started to speak. I didn't let him. "Tell your people, we're not for sale, not now, not ever." He left. Quiet, no argument. Because deep down, even, he knew, some things money can't touch. That was the last time anyone tried. No more notices. No more threats. No more strangers with fake smiles. Just wind in the trees, dirt on my boots, and the kind of silence that feels earned. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in what you gain. It's in what you refuse to lose. Spring came early this year. The fields turned green faster than usual. Birds returned to the fence lines. The air had that clean, sharp smell of a world trying to start over. And for once, I let it. I finally took the tarp off the tractor, gave it a wash, tuned up the engine, not because I needed to move it, but because it deserved it. That machine had become more than metal and rust. It had become a line in the sand. One morning, as I was fixing the gate, a truck rolled up the road. Young couple, baby in the back seat, eyes wide like they didn't quite believe they'd made it here. They waved, nervous. I waved back. He leaned out the window. You the guy with the tractor story? I smiled. Depends who's asking, he laughed. We just bought the land down the ridge. Wanted to say thanks. Not sure we'd even be here if you hadn't stood up. I nodded. You're here now. That's what matters. As they drove off, I looked around. Same sky, same fields, same dirt. But everything had changed. Because this wasn't just about a ranch anymore. It was about what land means. It's not about fences or surveys or board approvals. It's about roots. About freedom. About a man's right to live without a stranger knocking on his gate, demanding papers like he doesn't belong. That's what they forgot. That's what I reminded them. And if anyone ever comes down that road again, clipboard in hand, fake authority in their pocket, they'll find the same tractor parked right out front, still standing, still saying no, because some things you don't move. Not for anyone. Not ever.